Welcome to episode 9 with Bill Jeppesen. I'm calling this one Unlocking the Secrets of PPC Advertising. Bill has been creating and managing highly performing Google ad campaigns since the 90s. I met Bill in 2014 after several failed attempts to find a competent Google ad campaign manager for my packaging company. Over the next 10 years, Bill's PPC ad strategy helped us grow from a $50,000 a year garage company to a $10 million leader in sustainable specialty packaging. Bill and I spoke about what that took on the marketing and operations side, the art and science of keyword advertising, how lead generation ties in with business operations, the importance of sales acumen related to PPC ROI success, and many other topics related to paid and organic Google ad placement. So, why does any of this matter? And more importantly, why should you listen? Well, if you run a product centric company, you have to find customers to buy your product. There are many ways to do that: social media, trade shows, networking, advertising, digital and otherwise. When you Google something, before any organic results pop up, you get served a bunch of ads. A lot of people click on those ads, some end up buying your product. This is the most direct and trackable form of advertising. It shows people your product precisely when they're looking for it. Same is true for your local services. If you run a spa or a roofing company, Google Ads is a great way to find new clients. As with anything, if you plan on throwing money at this thing, you're better off knowing how to use it properly. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of cash and get little to no results, and then get resentful and blame the medium, which is a bad idea because, while not perfect, Google Ads are fantastic for getting your business off the ground and scaling it into millions, speaking from personal experience. And so, enjoy. So, Bill, what's the secret of PPC?
Knowing how to use the tools, particularly Google Ads. That's my area of expertise. I've toyed with Facebook advertising and I've toyed with Instagram, and the concepts are the same. But my area of expertise really is Google Ads. And the thing is, you can be good at using the tools. You can be good at defining an audience as provided by the tools that Facebook is very good at that. Instagram is very good at that. Google Ads has a lot of capability to do that, which I refer to as Big Brother. So there's Big Brother information that you can get. But even knowing how all those tools work, at the end of the day, an effective PPC campaign, and let me step back just a little bit, you can write really good ads. You can write, I use all the tools, the site links, the call outs, the recommendations that make sense for automated bidding. You can do all of that. But at the end of the day, it's the landing page and the website and the content that make the difference. It is the classic case of leading the horse to water, but can you get it to drink? Now, you and I go back a long ways with the paper tube company. And when we first started, I took the idea of why paper tubes are really good. These are, again, high-end quality paper tubes for anybody listening. There's really two kinds of paper tubes: industrial, commercial,
mailing cores, basically. Yep.
Yeah, cardboard, or wrapped paper, mailing or poster tubes. And then there's the paper tubes that Paper Tube Company does, which are very high-end, very high quality secondary packaging. And skipping forward a little bit, to make your product stand out on the shelf. That's where you and I ended up. But when I first started working with you, I was writing ads about the benefits of paper tube packaging and why you'd want to get paper tube packaging. And, we got an okay number of clicks and impressions, but we weren't really driving sales. And it wasn't really the website so much as we weren't getting the right message across. And you and I had a very nice conversation. I always remember this. It was many years ago when we first met each other. Was you had explained to me that people who want to use paper tube packaging have already decided they want to use paper tube packaging. And the light went on. And I was like, oh, and I changed my perspective to, if they already know they want to do paper tube packaging, why paper tube company? And
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be competing with Uline and Office Depot for commercial paper tubes. How do we separate ourselves? And we came up with a great advertising theme about separating your product on the shelf, standing out from the shelf, when packaging matters, all of the key phrases. And those worked really well, which brings me back to my website content. Now we're getting great click-through rates. The search queries are dead on. And we've got not only ready-made tube sales, which we can go into in another conversation about why they matter or don't matter, but we are also getting those
Mm-hmm.
contact forms for specialty orders and custom orders. And that was the content on the website that really worked. What was missing was I didn't quite have the ad copy right. Once I got the ad copy right and was writing from the perspective of the buyer, not on why you should buy, why tubes are good, but more like, well, if you're going to buy tubes, why should you buy them from Paper Tube Company? And
That's
that
right.
is a very what's what I want? It's integral to a successful PPC campaign, because it's so easy to write about what the product is when you should be writing about why you should buy from this company. Like if it's a fairly generic product, I have a very, very cool, great client that if I can just pitch their name, or you can edit it out. Eco
No.
Packables.
You can go
Okay,
ahead.
so Eco Packables, they do a really neat set of products that are earth friendly for
Mm-hmm.
packaging clothing or packaging food or packaging mailers. And that you see these all the time, like when you get an Amazon package. I would love for them to have the Amazon business, because not only
Mm-hmm.
do they have a great product, it's good for the earth. And I like that. I like having clients that are really helping people. That
Right.
said, we've got great ads because people who want sustainable packaging, they already know they want sustainable packaging. You can try ads, and we did this where, like, here's the benefits of sustainable packaging, but it can cost a little more than just your everyday packaging, but the earth benefits and doing the right thing make up that delta. So we really moved into, here's why you should buy from EcoPackables. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
get on their website, they have very much feel and flair, not unlike Paper Tube Company, where the products are displayed with the examples of, this is what we're talking about, customizing it, packaging, put your brand out there and associating your brand with earth-friendly, compostable, recyclable, all these positive green messages as part of your packaging. And it really works because they've got great content. I
Yeah.
have another client.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, I was going to say, before you even go there, before I forget, you've mentioned a few interesting things, because the insight that when people search for specific terms, the question they're asking isn't, is this product right for me? The question they're
right.
asking is, who should I buy the product from? And so
Mhm.
once you kind of make that click in your mind, writing copy or creating ads or thinking about PPC changes in your thinking, because then you move away from the product to the entity that's selling it. And in fact,
Yeah.
that's the reason people like PPC to begin with, because there's a whole variety of advertising and marketing mediums, and I'm sure we'll get into those later in the show. But PPC specifically allows you to get the potential customers at the time that they're searching for the product. And so
Yes.
that's why I think it's so effective.
Very, very much so.
To,
Particularly search ads, Google search ads. Again, I'm going to be biased towards Google advertising because that really is my area of expertise.
And
But
because effective is in your actually in the name of your company.
yeah, effective PPC, that's me.
Yeah.
What happens with Google search ads is you have a very specific one-to-one relationship with the potential customer. The
Mm-hmm.
customer search, as you said, they already know what they want. They're not looking for like, what are paper tubes good? They're looking for secondary packaging for paper tubes, right? Or they're looking for eco-friendly mailers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ad comes up that is specifically about the very thing they just searched for. So no, there's a
Right.
lot of the tool stuff that I referenced earlier that you do need to understand and know about using the right keywords and then blocking the right, or well, they would technically be the wrong keywords with negative words that can seem like they would be relevant, but in fact are not what your client is really doing. So I don't want to get too far afield on one subject and then skip to another one, but on the keyword thing, you're doing a one-to-one search. You look for high-end paper tube packaging, and boom, there's our ad for high-end paper tube packaging, and using the keywords and the ad copy and having it be about, why paper tube and why it's important. And when I say paper tube, I mean paper tube company. All of that's important, but it's a one-to-one relationship where you now have targeted the keyword that you would really like for people to search for. You've got an ad copy that is very much about that exact keyword, and you have a landing page that is the content that is very relevant to that keyword. Those three legs of the stool, when put together, if they don't work, if you're not getting sales, it's not the ads. Something else is going on.
Right.
So it's
Right.
so
And that's what
easy as an
actually.
advertiser, especially when you're new to this and you go, "Oh, we're not getting any traffic. Let's do ads," which is not a bad idea. I'm actually in favor of that concept. You got a great website, you get a great idea, but nobody knows who you are, and Google hasn't got you into their algorithm, so you're not showing up in search, and well, again, Instagram and Facebook too. But if you don't have that piece of the puzzle, Google will let you pay to get out there, and which is not, that's how they make
Mm-hmm.
their money. That is what Google's number one revenue source is, advertising. And if you have a
Right.
great
Yeah.
product, you want to do it, that can get you there. That said, if you don't have that back end set up, if you don't have the customer interactions, if you make them jump through too many hoops, which is something that David, me, that yes, I do Google Ads, but I've been in the business, in the web business, since of July of 1998. We started a
Right.
web we started a web business, and we were getting all this traffic that we didn't understand why. And it turned out to be somebody else had a name very similar to our name, and they were advertising on TV, and people would come to our website, and I
That's
realized,
awesome.
oh my goodness, there might
Free
be
ads.
something. This is 1998, right? And
Yeah.
we put up a little banner ad on our page. We're saying we're trying to sell the domain name. This was back when that was the big deal,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a nickel a click. And we put it up Sunday at 10 o'clock at night, and Monday morning we had made $35. And it's like, what? And from that humble beginning, I learned Google Ads when it came out in October of 2000, I believe, is when AdWords, which is now Google Ads. And I
Mm-hmm.
had done this for our business, and I'm leaving out a lot of detail because we want to talk about PPC, but I had done this for our business, and Google's algorithms had changed over the years. If you're searching for a particular thing or a location, that's what you want. You don't want a domain that has a similar name. And I learned
Right.
how to target what people were looking for. And come 2008, when we had the big market crash, by 2010, my original business, I had a company called Effective PR. So you kind of see the
Mm-hmm.
relationship of the
Yeah, you have
names.
a PR background. But
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
get into that.
yeah. I'll tell you in a second there. So, but what happened was, for the first time since I had graduated university, for the first time in my life, I didn't have a client. And I'd never had that happen before. And my wife said, why don't you do for these other companies what you did for your company? And I was like, well, that's a great idea. And so I started looking around and started offering to do work. And this is about where you got referred to me. And I was working for really, really cheap. And people started to see the results I was getting for them. And one thing led to another. And now it's what I do to keep the lights on and the wolves at bay.
That's great. Yeah. And when we first met, did you basically just start, or were you pretty into it already?
When you and I met, I think we met in 2016, 2017.
I'd say 2015. I found the email actually.
2015.
I was doing a
okay, so I had started consulting, I think about 2013, 2014. And
okay, so a couple of years.
But I had been running Google Ads at that point for about 13 years. And between what I know from Google Ads and what I know from web business development, because I don't advertise my web design skills. I don't advertise my content development skills. I just have them from 27 years. Oh my God. No, that can't be. That math isn't right, is it?
No, I think you're that old.
No, I am that old. No, 1998 to now, that's 16 years, right? Or 26 years.
Yeah.
So 26 years running
26 years, that's right. That's right.
Web businesses. And
that's great.
And
I
think this
a lot has changed, I'm sure.
I think this circles back a very long way around what we were originally talking about was, if I see something, I say something, even though that's not really what you may have hired me for as a Google Ads expert. You get my MBA and my 25 years in public relations and my website knowledge for free. So I can't not say something. And you and I have had great conversations about how the checkout process worked, not getting in between the customer and the sale, not having like maybe a pop-up comes up, little simple things like that. I know that's not PPC, but to me, it's all part of the same job.
Success.
Because I can build, and I have done this in the past, really, really good ad campaigns with all the KPIs that matter. The click-through rates are tremendous. The search terms are great. The price per click is right in the ballpark. We're always on budget. Everything's working, but we're not getting sales. So as I'd said before, that's not an ad problem. That's a web problem or a market problem or maybe
operations problem. It could be a whole variety of things. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I always caution, and I especially guys or gals that are new to PPC, either as, hey, let's bring on somebody who can help us, or somebody who's trying to get into the business like what I do, that recognize it's more than just what your program is. The whole thing has to work. And I've left or have had clients leave always on good terms, where I've said to a client, you really shouldn't be advertising. All the KPIs are there, but people are not buying. They just aren't buying this. And it's, I don't want, see, David, I don't want to do an account that runs great and the client doesn't make any money.
Right.
It's not fulfilling. I don't get this sense of, at least I'm making money. That's just not how it works. I always want to be part of the team. And for me, I've been incredibly fortunate that all of my work is referral. And I get to work with small business and directly with the owners. So we have like you and I, we have a connection. I know how good you are at what you do, and you know how good I am at what I do. And together it makes for a very good team. If you're new to this business and you're going to work for a department, do it, get experience. The thing with working for a corporation or like a department of a corporation is they're under a lot of stress, and they've got bosses telling them what to do and giving direction on what they got to do, and then you're coming in to try to support that. That's a little harder. It's not that you can't do it. It's just harder because there's a lot more maybe constant reporting, constant justification for the things that you're doing. Whereas when I work with the small businesses, and again, I'm very fortunate on this, is the small businesses and owners that I work with trust me. I don't make budget updates willy-nilly. I don't look at something and just make a random change. I always do it from the perspective of how is this going to help? Will this help? What is the data telling me? And then, I can make a recommendation. And it's a little easier on me because I know that the people I work with know I know what I'm doing. That trust with your client may be the secret to PPC. The very first question you asked, that might be the secret. The trust with your client.
Yeah, I think that's one touch point. I think there's a lot of details you can dive deeper into. For example, I'd like to come back to kind of the overall metrics of success in PPC aren't just tied to PPC alone. They're tied to all the other aspects of business operations and marketing and web development and process and systems that enable those leads that come in via PPC to actually be converted to paid clients.
Yeah,
because
there's
otherwise
no
it's a
magic
waste
bullet.
of money and it's a waste of time for everybody. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, PPC is not a magic bullet. Like I said, you can have a great campaign by every aspect, but if people aren't buying what you're selling, then you need to reassess. And I would argue that if you understand PPC and you can show your client, this is what people search for. This is what the typical click-through rate would be. This is what our click-through rate is. Here's the keywords that we're targeting, and you can walk them through step by step. This should work.
Yeah.
And if it's not, I've said this a few times now, it's not the ads. Now, a bad ad campaign, that's easy. You just take every recommendation given in the program and see what happens. Yeah. I don't want to trash Google because it's a big part of how I make my living, but it has gone down considerably in terms of the way it runs its advertising revenue part of the business. In 2019, the head guys stepped down. I think they're still part of the business, and they have passed it along to, I don't remember the gentleman's name. He used to run YouTube search. And that didn't go so well. And he's now running Google Ads. And he has said, you can look this up. I don't think I'm saying anything out of school here because there's articles about this online. He has said that the ad revenue is paramount. It's the driving force, whereas before it was search quality first, ad revenue second. And if I'm wrong, then I take it back, and I would hope that Google doesn't sue me. I'm referring to articles that I have read, and you can easily find online.
We're going to fact check you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're going to fact check you.
I can email you a link to the articles.
Worst case, they take this podcast down, and we'll still be okay.
And look, it's not as good as it used to be. It just isn't.
Yeah,
but it's still super powerful.
It's still a big chunk.
Effective.
Yeah.
The things that have changed are much more along the lines that more revenue for Google seems to be the driving force. Where I've said to clients, they've made some changes to drive revenue. Theirs, not yours. And so over the years, I've seen how things have changed, and I have my own strategies to combat that. And I have to work twice as hard to stay where I'm at with the success that I'm having with my clients, but it works. And you just have to be able to understand the strategy that they're doing and then how you can use that. It's like, I think I saw you had mentioned jujitsu in one of
Yep,
your podcasts.
I have.
It's like that. You use their force and momentum to your advantage. So
Yeah, I think
this
you
is,
end up actually
pardon
you
me?
probably end up inferring a lot of results from the data because the data doesn't necessarily give you all the answers.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. From day one, when I started to learn Google Ads, I realized the answers that you need are in the data, and
Hmm.
data-based adjustments almost always work. The trick is knowing what you're looking at and where to look for it. If
Right.
it's simplified, if the click-through rates are below what they should be, why? Why is that? If there are certain keywords that are getting a lot more attention than another one, and that's what's triggering your ads, but you're not signing new clients or you're not selling the products. Well, what's with that keyword? Why doesn't that keyword? What is the data showing me? And I have a client where there are a lot, and we didn't know this at first. We had very specific types of keywords that for the service that they provide, and they're getting great click-through rates in there, and people are using that actual term, and we're not getting a dime. Nothing's working. And I looked
Hmm.
at it, and then I realized the click data is telling me these are academic searches. They're not looking for
Hmm.
the service. They're looking for information about what this is. These are
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
searching, potentially students, potentially um, uh, um, people who might be in a situation that they need that type of service. They want to know, well, what is this? They're not doing searches about the service like, I need this. Who does this near me? And I said, I want to do a test. I want to block all these search terms. They look great on the surface level. They look great. I said, I want to block everything that is clearly or maybe an academic search term, and do that every day and build a super robust negative keyword list. And over time, and this strategy actually works, but you have to find it in the data. Over time, what
Hmm.
happened is this negative keywords got so big and so robust that about the only thing left were the service-oriented keyword searches. And the spend was the same, because the money we were spending on what we learned were academic searches, well, that money, that
Hmm.
budget was still available for the service-oriented searches.
Hmm.
And even though we spent the same, the conversions just went up, 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 up. And the cost of the conversions went down, 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 down. So we weren't spending money on academic. And how did we learn that? The data. I'm looking at the data and I'm thinking, this just doesn't make sense. These are really good. Here's click data. Here's the number of things. This is what we spent. This is when, oh, that's the other thing, is something that you and I discovered. People who are looking for the products that Paper Tube Company is selling are almost uniformly in an office working
Hmm.
9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And they're probably on a laptop, which flies in
Hmm.
the face of Google search trends. Mobile surpassed desktop search. I don't know, was it 10 years ago? So probably something right around, or maybe 8 years ago,
Something
where
like that. Yeah,
the
I do
number
remember
of,
that.
I mean, it all goes back to when 2008, when the when the iPhone came out.
Hmm.
So searches on mobile devices have surpassed desktop searches, and uniformly it's like 60-40, or you can, depending on what it is, it could be 80-20 mobile, but it's about 60-40, 65-35 mobile. But for Paper Tube Company, we excluded mobile. We might have added it back in over time, because there's, again, the data will tell you, like, conversions
Hmm.
are dropping off and are dropping off. If we put mobile back in, and those conversions come back up, you can see that that's where we were losing the traffic, is the desktop user wasn't doing it anymore. But at the end of the day, the data told us they're in the office Monday through Friday. So we weren't advertising on weekends, because weekend conversions cost a fortune versus the cost of a conversion during the week. And we were like, well, wait a minute, why don't we just not advertise on weekends? Just don't do it. Well, that budget stayed the same. The spend stayed the same, but it all went towards the Monday. So that was I thought that was a really good example of what is the data telling us? It's telling us Monday through Friday.
There's two things. There's two things I want to pick up on here. So first, you're talking about the data, and PPC tends to generally fall on the side of data-driven marketing, because there are some marketing tactics that are untrackable, and they're kind of like branding and billboards. You can't tell who's looking at them, and and you can't really tell who's how much that marketing tactic or that marketing strategy is contributing to the actual numbers on the conversion side, and how you can track it and all of that. However, PPC is really like very pragmatic in that regard. It's you know what you spend, you know how the conversions are. You can track your return on investment, return on ad spend, all the proper metrics. However, anytime you're looking at the whole picture, while you have the data, you still have to have the knowledge that's the unmeasurable in that equation to be able to know what to do with the data. It's ultimately like science and religion. Science is telling you what the data is, but religion is telling you how to act on that data in the best way possible for the long game. And so kind of your PR background is piggybacking right on that, because you have the PPC numbers, and you have the back end, and you have the admin area that's like spitting out data at you. But then you have to have the acumen and the knowledge and your understanding of context to be able to take that data and actually improve it. So that's one thing.
I have a phrase in my profile. It's where math meets art.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's I started my kind of a side consulting gig now that I have time, and my phrase there is something along the lines of there are things you can measure, and there are unmeasurables. We're engineers of the unmeasurable, because I think that side matters just as much as the measurable data.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you can see it's right, and you can feel it's right, or feel it's wrong.
Right.
And it's
interesting. And then I was going to say the second thing. Yeah, hold that thought.
Yeah.
The second thing there is, once you start looking at the data and you start making certain decisions, you can almost split the type of PPC advertising into kind of two camps. There's the broad camp, and then there's the specific camp, right? The specific camp is exactly what we've been talking about for the past 30 minutes. It's like people are looking for paper tubes, people are looking for paper bags, they're looking for a car, they're looking for a specific item, and the question is, who am I going to buy it from? So they're actually like searching for specific things. And then the broad side of that, if you have the budget and people play kind of both sides to figure out which one is right, is they may know the category but not the specific thing, sort of like the academic terms you mentioned. They're searching for eco-friendly packaging, and even though our ad is coming up, that isn't necessarily becoming a conversion. And so you have to kind of tweak both sides of it, because even though the general term seems like some place you want to show up when people search, it may not be the right path for you, depending on the category, depending on your budget, depending on the type of audience you're trying to serve.
Yeah, and that's the like I said, where math meets art. That's the art part of it.
Yep.
But getting back to something you said about with PPC being directly measurable, which it absolutely is, it changed the advertising game. It absolutely it was here's how many impressions your television ad got. Here's our circulation for the magazine. Here's how many radio listeners we have. And so your message is getting out there. I think that the phrase is the shotgun effect, that you just,
Right. Or the funnel, right?
well, no. It's before you got them into the funnel. This is mass marketing, which is why it's called mass media.
Mm.
And you do see
Hmm.
results. I mean, you can say we spent X number of dollars running this television ad for 45 days, and we saw sales rise X, Y%. So you can do that, but you can't really say Bob Smith saw this ad on Tuesday at noon
Right.
and made a purchase decision. Whereas PPC, you can absolutely see. Now, you may not know it was Bob Smith until he fills out the form, right? But you can see that this ad was clicked at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday,
Correct.
and then a sale was made at 2:05. You can
Well, I
see
would
that.
say that you could also have the inverse problem because you have a question of attribution because
Mhm.
you're spending money on PPC and you want to know whether you want to throw more money at it, and so you want to know whether they perform well. So the problem of attribution could become maybe they saw an ad on TV and maybe they googled your name and then maybe your ad came up and maybe they clicked on the ad and then the Google got the attribution and not the TV ad.
I'm so glad you brought this up because you had said something earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt, um, about you can do this direct stuff with PPC, but when you have a larger marketing campaign and you're running mass media, or even if you're just, let's just say you're sticking with Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube ads,
Hmm.
you're reaching out to very targeted audiences, or at least you're hoping you are, and you have Google ads. A lot of times you'll see the Google ad click rate go up because of what you just described. They saw your name,
Mm.
they saw what you're selling, they come back to the office or they come home or they mention it to somebody, and then they go, oh, let me look it up, and boom, there's your ad. So there is
Yeah, I can't quite recall who it was, but let me
yeah,
Google the term.
yeah. And it's
Right.
not, it's not the halo effect, but it's kind of similar in that the halo effect is like I run my ads and I stop on day 30 and I still see the effect of the ads for the next week or 10 days. That's
Right.
technically the halo effect. But what
Yeah.
I'm, and there's a better marketing phrase for this. It's, cross-platform awareness. And
Hmm.
for marketers who are much better at this than I am, they can go in and really do a deep dive analysis between the cross-platform attribution and
Mm.
really look at how much did we spend on display, how much did we spend on Facebook, how much did we spend on the radio drive time ads, and what did our Google ads sing? And those guys, I mean, if you showed me the spreadsheet and you walked me through it 100%, I understand what you're doing. That's a level that is much more at a that is not a mom and pop small business type of service that don't even think you would expect that because you're a small business mom and pop shop. I get it.
Right.
It's not something that I do, but there are agencies out there, and there are brilliant people. I've seen this on. I had mentioned Reddit has a subreddit that's R PPC. There's also an R AdWords and an
Hmm.
R Analytics and stuff, but R PPC seems to be the most organized, focused, with a lot of experts. And I've read stuff in there and I'm just like, wow, I thought I was good at
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, there's some people who like think in data.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's all. That's why I've often said to people, I go, that's why some people like vanilla and some people like chocolate. We have different approaches to how the stuff is. I fit in well with small business organizations. I've
Yeah.
worked in high
I
end. I managed the PR department for a division of Sun Microsystems. I know what that's like. It's not
mm,
my thing anymore, but I have an appreciation for being on that side of the fence. So I know how you can do that. But like I said, I'm very fortunate that I get to work with the owners, and it's rewarding. I can't complain. I'm very
Yeah.
fortunate. And again, I'm not trying to, hubris. I'm good at what I do. I've been doing it a long time. I have a lot of success, and help businesses earn or be profitable. Which is like I've said that. I said I had to write a profile, and I said it's all about the ROI, or what's the point. So that's the
Right.
math part of it. But going back to what you said
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
there's the PPC has the direct data that you absolutely should know. You should be able to look at that data and do math and say this works or this isn't working, or you can see what the trend is, and an expectation that it will pick up. And then you get into things like seasonality and promotions, and if you're doing an email trickle campaign or remarketing, retargeting campaigns, all of that stuff comes into play. But knowing that there's that art part of it, the other there's consistent messaging, but you have other platforms that do come into play. In fact, Google does this thing that, and I will be honest with you, I don't quite have 100% grasp on how they do this, but I understand what they're doing. And it used to be, and you can still do this, you get a click and a conversion, and that conversion is associated directly with that click. 1-to-1.
Yeah, I don't know how that's possible.
Well, no, that is possible, because the click data, assuming you don't have an ad blocker or that you're not allowing cookies. So that's like, just for the sake of this discussion, about 25% of paid click traffic may not get credited as being a paid click, because ad blockers can interrupt the tag. And if the tag doesn't fire, the session still happens. The sale is still real, but analytics, or because if you're going through analytics, doesn't know where the click came from. So it will assign it as the source was direct and the medium was none. It's called direct none. And then the other one they do is called not set, which is the bane of me and all of my peers.
It's the main bucket.
Look up Google Analytics not set. I don't think you'll find any happy people.
I'm sure there's a lot of people complaining, right? Yeah, for us, we could never.
Let me just say, what Google does is they do this other one called Attribution, click attribution. And they are able to look at like a user's data, and that they may have seen this ad and then later clicked on an ad, or maybe that there was some exposure to the ad on more than one platform, and ultimately leading to a conversion. And so that conversion won't get 100% credit to the ad click. It might get 0.7% credit. So you'll see totals like 90.42, because it's spreading the distribution across the different platforms. And if that's important to how you track your business, then it makes a lot of sense. And I would dive deeper into knowing how they do that specifically. I just understand it conceptually.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like, just from our side, we could never figure out, or we could never tie really the keyword that they used to get to our ad with the customer that submitted the form. It was like, no matter what we did, it was almost impossible. It was so difficult that it was just not worth doing, because you needed like a team of data scientists.
Well, we got pretty close with
overall
data.
Okay. I remember what I saw was the terms and how many conversions the terms had. However, it was so far and few between that it wasn't really usable, because then I couldn't. It still wouldn't let me figure out how to throw more money at more performing keywords, which is what you really want to do, right?
And that I know we've had this conversation, and the best that we could come up with, and there's people out there that if they're listening to this, they're going, no, this is how you do it. Okay.
Email me. I'd like to know.
We came up with some pretty neat tracking using Data Studio and Google Analytics, and unfortunately, when they changed from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4, and it's all session-based instead of user-based, having to do with the changes in the privacy settings and the privacy requirements of the internet. The very easy to get data is much harder to get. It's still out there.
Right.
And those who are experts at that end of it can manipulate or figure out how to tease the data out of the new GA4. But for us, what we were able to do is we could see what search terms were used. And it's important too, David, that if there were 100 search terms, that doesn't, in the report, that doesn't mean those are all of the search terms. It's a very significant sample of the search terms. So the same one might have come up 10 times, and a very similar one might have come up once, but the 10-time ones will show and the similar one won't show in the report.
Right.
Now, that's not hard and fast. That's not a rule. That's some guy yelling at me right now saying, no, you can get that data. And I know. But what I'm saying is the search term report is not exhaustive.
Right.
And that said, you can still see which ones are associated with which keyword. But what I think you're saying, and the challenge we always had is, did Bob Smith type in that search term that triggered that keyword at this hour on that day that led to this the form?
The form being submitted. And furthermore, did that form convert into a sale, and what's the value of the sale? And could I correlate the value of the sale, the average value of a sale for a particular keyword, so then I can figure out which short head or long tail keywords are actually more profitable,
right?
Because I imagine some are more and some are less, and I could never figure that out. And we spent
one of the biggest challenges.
We spent 13 years in it. We couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, and you're better at this than I am, and you couldn't get it. But
no,
I know we've had this discussion. I've had this with clients over and over. And when I talk to a Google ad rep, and they say, "Oh, well, you got to assign this value to that," and I go, "No. Here's why you can't do that." And this is why where PPC makes sense for guys like me when you working with a small business, and I understand the business, and that's maybe secret sauce subprime one. Understand what the business is, and this is a great example of that. I would explain to the rep. Buyer A might click on our ad, go to the ready tubes, and order 10 of them for $40. And there's, the click cost us $1, and we got a $40 sale. Buyer B comes in and buys one tube for $2.50. Okay, obviously you can't average those two, right? That doesn't make any sense. It's 41 divided by 2, right? It doesn't do you any good. But this is what I tell the ad rep. I go, so 2 weeks later, buyer A runs out of the 40 tubes and orders another 40 tubes. Okay, that's great. That's a lifetime value type of analysis. Maybe they go through and then every 6 months they order another 40 tubes or whatever. But buyer B, who bought one tube, he might come back and place a $50,000 order with custom printing.
Right.
And the beauty of that particular customer is Paper Tube Company would deliver exactly what they asked for with custom print with this high quality tube, right? And when he goes to run out, where's he going to go? Right back to Paper Tube. So there's another $50,000 sale. And I said, how do you
measure LTV basically?
The value on the and I know this, and I've said this to you, and I've said this to other clients. You can get a stake in the ground if you take 6 months or a year's worth of data, and you look at here's how many conversions we had, here's how much revenue we made, and then divide that across the 1,000 or 5,000 conversions. You can get a rough value of this is what a conversion is worth. but you can't get a specific
Yeah.
value. It just can't be done.
Right.
So
Yeah. I
knowing
mean,
that,
you ultimately judge it broadly because it's like the
mhm.
business is growing. We're doing PPC. Maybe we lowered PPC a little bit, and so the business started growing slightly less. So why don't we not do that again? And I think that's kind of the way to judge it long term, right?
That's another thing that you just reminded me. We talked about the cross-platform impact on Google Ads and you potentially higher impression rate, higher click rate, higher conversion rate while you're
Mm-hmm.
running mass media and other social media advertising. And you see this bump in Google Ads, right? Another phenomenon that we see, and I know we see this with paper too, but I see this with other clients, is you say, hey, you know what? Let's back off on our, and let's say you're only doing PPC, you're only doing Google Ads. You say we got to back
Mm-hmm.
off on our spend. Well, you look at the attribution of paid click sales and direct click sales and organic click sales and referral click sales, they all drop. Every one of them drops when this, and mostly the biggest drop off, to be fair, it's not like they drop at the same rate. The
Mm-hmm.
direct ones just drop almost 1-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
And the organic ones will drop a little bit more. And what it is those ads running at the top, that name is there, and maybe they see your organic result below it and decide to click that, right?
It's possible.
But if you're not showing, obviously they're not clicking on it. And to be fair, and I will die on this hill. Google does not improve your organic search results because you advertise. That
Yeah.
would kill them. If people
Yeah. Two
believe
separate entities.
if they believe the organic results are only there because they're paid, that will kill Google search. And they
Mm-hmm.
know that. So I will die on that hill. I've seen people make arguments. I've seen them point out, oh, look, here's what our data shows us. I question the data or I question the methodology because having been in public relations for 25 years, the biggest thing that we knew was that the publications that we worked with, newspapers, print, and market analysts, had to be believed. Because if anybody believed that the only reason that article was in that there was because it was paid for advertising, it doesn't have the
Right.
gravitas, it doesn't have the effect. And the print reporters that I worked with on a regular basis, their reputation was the most important thing to them, that they were seen as
Mm-hmm.
being unbiased, not influenced by the advertising department. And there was a wall between paid and editorial. And that same
Yeah, for
wall
sure.
exists at Google Ads for now. Is there an effect that might happen because you advertise? I think so. It might be that your
Well,
name is coming up.
yeah, I think what's happening is as you're beginning to advertise, you're ultimately starting to work on the website in a way that converts the leads coming from PPC to sales. And so your website's getting better and it's getting more changes. And all those things are probably contributing to SEO.
Yeah, it's not one thing. I think I mentioned that
Yeah,
earlier.
it's kind of an indirect effect.
It's almost never one thing. Um,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
data supposedly will tell you what the things are. But it's been an interesting conversation because you and I really have gotten along together from the get-go, and I've learned a lot working with you because you have a perspective that I understand, but I didn't have. Where I'm like, oh,
Mm.
and as being the old guy in this business, I have the opportunity to work with 20 somethings and 30 somethings that have a completely different perspective than I do. And I learn from them. As I like to say to one of my clients, she's very, very smart.
Hmm.
And she said to me, she goes, um, I don't think I'm going to give her enough credit for the way she said it. She says something to the effect like, I'm not as jaded as you are. And I said, oh, it's not that I'm not jaded. It's just that I've been down this road so many times. It always goes to
Yeah.
the same place. And she said, yeah. And I go, I'm not saying that there isn't something out there, but I've been there. I know what this is. I get the same email all the time. And so she went ahead
Yeah.
and did this meeting anyway and came back, and damn it, if she didn't have something that I hadn't thought of. I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't know what I don't know. And I rarely talk to Google ad reps, not because I'm some great Google ads expert. I'm very good at what I do, but Google ads is complicated. And there are pieces of it that I don't deal with because I don't need to. And occasionally they will come out with something that is new, or they haven't really explained it yet, or made much of a, announcement about it. And there'll be like this cool little trick. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So I'm there. I don't know what I don't know. But the
Yeah.
Google ad reps, again, I don't want to be negative on
It's all
Google ad,
sales as far as I'm concerned.
but I know that they are tasked with a very large number. I don't know how many it is, but it's a large number of advertisers. Here's their email. Here's their phone number. They are measured on how many they can get on the phone, and they are measured by what they can get them to increase their ad spend. Now, ideally, the increased ad spend will also result in increased sales. That's the goal, right? But you're dealing with ad reps who are really good at how Google Ads works, but don't understand the business that is in play here.
That's
They are
right. It's the
often
context we
overseas, and
talked about.
I don't want to be shitting on them, but they often don't understand the business. And I get a cookie cutter email. I have like, gosh, what I don't keep like an accurate count. I have like 10 accounts, something like that. And I'll get the same email from the same guy for 4 different emails, and it'll say, and the only thing it changes is the name of the business. And I'm like, oh, come on, man, that's not helping me. But I got one today where the guy wrote a bunch of personal stuff, and that guy I replied to. And I rarely reply to them because I have a feeling if there's something there that I don't know, he's going to help me understand it. But I am also asking, I said, please give me specific examples of what you're referencing. And if you can do that, I'll take a call with them.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good example of how you should conduct sales, because if you're just doing the same thing everybody else is doing and it's very generic, chances are people aren't calling you back. However, if you spend just 10% more to make things very personal, you're calling him back to at least give them 10 minutes of your time to see what they have to say.
Yeah, because
And
I mean,
that's a
the fact
start
that
to a potential sale.
I even pointed out to him in my reply, I said, thank you for not using the cookie cutter template that I receive weekly. And now his might be a template for him, but at least he personalized it. He gave a little background information about what he likes. This is what he does. This is what his thing is. And then I looked him up and I found him on LinkedIn. And
That's
I could
awesome.
read more about him, and that, he really is a Google ad rep and he really does work in this office. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this could be good. And speaking of personalizing, I have a client that does 12-volt conversion kits for classic and vintage cars. And just what that means is the classic cars from the 20s through about 1955. They think of the cars you see in Cuba, all those Pontiacs and DeSotos and Model A, Model T, old Chryslers. They are built with a 6-volt motor or 6-volt system with a positive ground. And if you drive them around today, what you really want is to convert it to 12 volts. So you have brighter lights, you can have air conditioning, you can have power windows, all the things that you can't really do with those. So that's what the market is, right? So he goes down to SEMA the automotive show in Las Vegas, and he
Uh-huh.
told me he's in the booth talking to these guys, and he said almost to a one, they're telling him about what the business is, and they're looking around like, who else is here? And they're telling him about what their business is, and they look around. He goes, nobody asked me anything. He goes, then I go to this other one where I'd been before, and the owner comes up and starts asking me, how are you doing? What are you seeing at the show? How's your business going? What are you guys working on?
Mhm.
What's happening? How does your thing work? And he goes, I was happy to, I'd sit there and talk to him all day, give him the business, because that guy cared more about my client than anybody else in that booth.
Mm.
Whereas the other guys only cared about who else was in the booth and this is what we're selling.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah,
that's
you have
often
to be from a
perceived. I suspect that there's a tie in there because I don't just tell you what I do. I want to know what your business is. I want to understand your customer, because in the art part, the ad copy that I write, I like to think of it from the perspective of the potential customer, the potential client. And I'll give you an example before we go. I know we're just about out of time. I
No,
work
we're
with a
not out of
guy.
time. We can keep going.
I work with a company that makes steel buildings, and they're
Uh-huh.
very good at it. But so is everybody else who makes steel buildings. So what's the difference? And so the ad copy that I wrote was, nobody makes a bad steel building. The difference comes
Mm.
down to not just price, but service and reliability. And we do very well.
Mm.
Because if you're looking for a steel building, I don't have to sell you on why steel buildings are a good, cost-effective way to build a barn or an RV shed or whatever it is that you want to do. You already made that decision. So why should you buy from us? And like I said, nobody makes a bad steel building.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that one because that one is so unusual.
Yeah, I was just speaking yesterday to a person that does marketing for a living, and I told him this one phrase I heard at a trade show once. We were sharing a booth at one of the trade shows a while back with a guy that used to work for. I think they sold like primary packaging. They did like bottles and metal lipstick containers and just jars with droppers in it, and it's like a commodity product to me.
Yeah.
And I turned to him and I'm like, well, how are you doing here? Because everybody, like 80% of the show is basically the same product. And he said, people work with people. And
Yeah.
that phrase kind of stuck with me because, like, it doesn't matter what you make, it matters who you are. And so that's
Mhm.
exactly right. It's anybody can make a steel building. Why should you buy it from me?
So I'm gonna tell you something that I tell all of my clients, and we used to do this when I had the web business, but I've always had this philosophy, and I call it stupid honest. I'm
Mm-hmm.
stupid honest. I will tell you something that you don't really need to know, like something that maybe didn't work quite right with the campaign, but you'll never know. You will never see it. It will not hit your pocketbook. If I don't say anything, it's like it never happened. But I
Mm-hmm.
still tell you about it because I always want my clients to know, when I'm telling you this stuff, I'm telling you the full story. And
Yeah.
if I make a mistake, this is what I did and this is how I fixed it. Or like I was supposed,
Yeah.
like I had one where I was supposed to change a site link, and for whatever reason, I got sidetracked and it didn't get changed for like a day, and
Mm-hmm.
it never got a click anyway. So, you know, who's going to know? I know. I know that I didn't do it. So I said, hey, I goofed and I didn't get it. I didn't get it updated, but there were no clicks. So no harm, no foul. Just wanted to let you know. So stupid honest is part of that. People, you know, I know my clients, and you know what? I've said this before, but it really applies. It started with you. It's like I'm working for my friends.
Yeah.
I really like
Yeah.
that.
I believe that. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Are there business categories where PPC is not the answer? because I've always worked or I've done businesses that pretty much all relied on PPC, and
Okay,
everywhere I looked, everybody uses PPC. Are there types of companies? Are there service based companies, product based companies where just PPC is a wrong medium for marketing?
I can tell you where it tends to not work well. I can't say with definitive it's the wrong medium. The
Mm-hmm.
fashion industry, that's a really
Mm,
tough one. You can get tremendous clicks and everything you're advertising is just wow, we're getting all these impressions and clicks, and they are almost uniformly curiosity clicks. So when
mm-hmm.
you have, and that's like fashion, um, uh, women's clothing more, but I'm sure men's would be the same thing. It's that people like, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. And then I would raise that concept up a little higher to products that are highly visual and visually interesting. And
Mm,
that would be like my Halloween props client. He makes um, like professional movie level props, Halloween props.
mm,
That can be from very
mm-hmm.
affordable to very expensive. And sometimes I think he's just got a sick mind, some of the stuff that he makes. And they're, animated props. And you're just like, wow, dude, how do you sleep at night when you make that stuff? Well, when we
These are like
had,
silicone masks.
oh, F God, you name it. I like, it could be like this creepy child of the
Mm,
70s sitting in a chair that suddenly changes into something else as it pops up to scare you. And like, man, where do you come up with this stuff? And anyway, he's really, really good at it. And when we were running shopping ads, the images were so interesting that people were clicking on them left and right, but nobody was buying because these are high end.
mm,
I mean, there are some are more affordable than others, but these are for like, um, uh, if you have a resort or
haunted
if you are
houses.
one of those people that really goes nuts for Halloween and you've got a $3,000 budget or whatever, or maybe you're a more high end,
Haunted
but
houses, maybe, right?
yeah, oh yeah, haunted houses, yeah, those are big client, those are big customers of his. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
just a cheap looking thing; it's like really high quality stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
he actually he went on Shark Tank and got three sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him before this ever happened, if you ever go on Shark Tank, you have to bring me with you. And he did not. And that has
Ah,
been a point of jokes back and forth for the last like 6 months or so.
that's funny.
Like, a little
Yeah, I
note to
hear
him,
you.
like, I'm still waiting for Lori Grenier's call. When,
Yeah, they're
whenever,
they're overrated. There's nothing there that you'd be they say never meet your heroes. So
yeah,
I say you don't need
yeah.
to go
So
there.
the question, and I said, so fashion, I think fashion has
Yeah.
a real problem um, because of the curiosity clicks. And if you can bake that in to your budget and you can figure out how, because like Amazon really dominates a lot of this because they have such an easy return policy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amazon advertising is a whole nother kettle of fish. That's another one that
Yeah.
I have looked at it. I have worked with a guy that showed me how it works, and I know I could do it if that was something I wanted to do. But it's that's an entirely different animal, and I would have to do that full time. I don't think you can do Amazon advertising as a part time gig unless it's a very small
Yeah.
account and you just dabble with it. So fashion is a real tough one. Highly visible, highly visual products is a really tough one. Um, Supplement market is really hard. It's.
Yeah.
I remember from business school. There's saturated, and then there's pulverized.
Mm.
The supplement market is pulverized and dominated by 900-pound gorillas that just have tons of budget and they can just you can't get on the shelf or the literal or the not literal shelf, the virtual shelf, being
Yeah.
on shopping. And
Yeah.
then what it comes down to is like a shopping ad is the product picture, the name of it, the brand, and the price.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to distinguish your supplement. Your supplement might be the best, but you got to get that across with a label, and you have to have, multiple highly visual, very easy to read
Packaging. That's where packaging
packaging.
comes in.
Yes. So that's a really tough one to deal with. Um, and it's not that these don't work. Like I said, these are much more difficult, where you've got a service that a lot of companies are providing. So if you are doing private security, like I had a private security guy contacted me and is working out of Los Angeles area. And so before I took the interview, I did some research on his competition and who they
Mm-hmm.
are. And I told him the amount I would have to charge you versus how much revenue you're going to drive from this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I go, I'm going to be and not that I'm not even that expensive. I am told over and over, you don't charge enough.
Yeah, you don't
But
charge
I'm not
enough.
real. I know, yeah, you know that. But I've never really felt like I should go back and say, no, these guys are charging that, so I'm going to charge this. Because now I'm working for my friends. But, this guy's got a great service, but there's like 30 plus other security firms in his market, specifically where they serve, with way better websites. And I was like, if I take this on, I'm going to charge you an arm and a leg, and I don't think it's going to work. So
Yeah.
when you're highly competitive, that's where you've got to have that website. That's got to be mission one. The website's got to be perfect, or it's close. You know what? Let me rephrase, because perfect is the enemy of good enough. Your website has to be very good. It has to be able to convey the message, why you guys, it has to come across like why you are the right company for this. And going back to my vintage auto guy, they have complete kits to convert makes and models going back to like 1925 by over like 25, 30 different makes and God knows how many models. So there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kits. And then you're supposed to be, as a customer, you're supposed to be able to go through this and find your make and model and year, and that be the right kit. And then you might have to choose a different pulley size and whether or not you want this particular bulb. And it gets more and more complex. And we were talking about this the other day. And I said, this is really hard. And I know
Well,
what I'm doing, right?
yeah.
And he said, yeah, but where we make the sales is phone calls and contact forms describing what they need.
Yeah,
And I
actually,
said,
I would say he's almost better off creating some kind of automated, not a calculator, but like a product finder, almost like when you're buying windshield wipers. All you do
well,
is put in the
we
year and then
yeah,
the make, and then it'll spit out the exact
yes,
wipers you need.
we've had this discussion. The problem is, even then, there are subcategories that you still have to go and say, I need this. And
I see.
those vehicles tend to have been worked on many times over the 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years they've been on the planet. And a lot of times somebody will have done something and then the guy gets the kit and goes, this doesn't fit. Well, it does fit that
Yeah,
make and model, but whoever changed it. So we're talking
not
about
his
this,
make and model.
and we're talking about whether we should have all of these or not. And I said, yes, we should keep all of these on the website, because what it does is it demonstrates expertise.
Yeah,
We have the kits you need. So you could look at it and go, I'm not sure. And so what I did was I don't do web development, but I can cruise through WordPress and Wix and BigCommerce and Squarespace. I mean, they all do the same thing. They just put it in a different place and use a different name, but they all do the
yeah,
same thing. And the way my brain works, I just look at it and I get it. I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing here. So I went in and I went to every kit page and added in some text that said something to the effect of, uh, if you're having any trouble finding the right kit, you can request a custom. We can build you a custom parts list, or you can give us a call, and that's right at the top of every list of all these kits of every make and model. There's this quick, and this is one thing that I learned when I ran a web business. You cannot make it too easy to make a sale or fill out a form or get a phone call. You can't make it too easy. And I've had clients go, well, the phone number's right there. Okay. Is there any reason it can't be down here in the text as they're scrolling? What about, a little, like with you, I know you and I did this way back, that you can go to the contact form without any extra clicks. It's always available, right?
Yeah.
And so when we did that, it's been a few weeks and the kit sales are up. Is it that link? I don't know. Kind of like to think it is. Tying that back to the PPC ads, we advertise kits. And you can't advertise, you can try, and we did. We tried advertising specific make model, and then I do a spreadsheet, and I can fly around in Excel pretty well, but not like a mathematician who might be doing VLOOKUPs and other formulas that get into the complexities that Excel can do. I use it more to tie stuff together, so I can do like 1,000 variations of keywords and or ad copy, so that when that keyword is triggered, this ad will show with that year, make, and model. And so now the guy just looked for a 1932 I wanted to be a specific one, so you'd go, oh yeah, that one. So like a 1932 Mercury Zephyr straight V or V8 or V12, and then that would be my keyword, and that would be the exact ad. And so
that's
then
what people search for.
They would land on that one, and we just weren't getting the sales. But the one that worked was the generic one, where we didn't do the exact name, make, years, and model. And we, how we learned that? Data.
Trial and error.
The data showed us that even though we could do a very specific ad with a very specific keyword, which is good practice, that is a best practice. You want those keywords to show in the ad copy. And ideally, you want the landing page to be highly relevant to the thing that you just search for. And so we would land them on a 1932 Mercury Zephyr. And there's like there'd be 4 or 7 or 9 different versions of the kit, but they weren't ordering them. But when we sent them to the generic page where they could pick their make, they could pick their model, they could scroll down, then they would call us and say, well, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you? And then I get a kick out of is the people that work for my client that are on his payroll, they use the website to go through and set the order up for the customer. Because they know the intricacies of it. They know, what pulley to go with, what voltage to go with, what wiring harness you need and all that, what reducers you need, all these little things where you think you know what you're doing, but then you go to the website and you find all this information and you realize, oh, there's a lot more to this than I thought. But the beauty of that website, again, David, is whether you want to put that kit in your cart or not is secondary to the fact that those kits exist. And it exudes a sense of expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a long time ago when I was, before I started the paper tube company, I was working at Custom USB, and the CEO at that time was recommending that we put on our website, and this is like early 2000s, the largest available USB drive size on the market, even though we weren't even selling it, just to show expertise. So it's exactly in line of what you're saying. It's like, I think somebody released at that time a 512 gigabyte USB drive. We didn't sell it. It was like SanDisk or Lexa or one of those brands that just kind of announced and released it. And he basically said, why don't you just add it to the site to show that that's your expertise, is high-end memory flash drives, even though people don't even maybe you won't even have anybody who'll ask you for it, but those that end up on the website will see it and
Yeah.
know that you're that type of company.
And so if you have a risk adverse management, they'll say like, oh, but what if we get
What if
sued?
somebody asks? Right. What if
Yeah.
somebody
Okay.
asks?
First off, you're not going to get sued. Secondly, they would have to prove damages.
Right.
Thirdly, all you'd have to do is take it down.
Right.
And fourthly, it would take years before it ever got to court. And you've already demonstrated like, oh, we take it out. I learned that running my web business where I am not an attorney, but I played one on the internet.
Mm.
And I learned about the Layman Act, and I learned we got a cease and desist letter for something that we weren't even doing.
Mm.
I replied to the guy, "We don't do that," and they had us confused with a different business with a similar name. He's like, "Whoops, sorry," but
I see.
he gave me like $1,200 worth of attorney information because I could just take the cease and desist letter, change the names, and use our name, and then whoever was using our name illegally, and then I got this really great cease and desist letter. And
That's
thank
funny.
you.
That's
Um,
funny. It sounds like you had a good name picked out because you were getting somebody's leads and cease and desist letters.
yeah, I was skipping over the business name because we closed it in December,
Yeah.
and I don't want to go through all the details of it, but I'll tell you this. Um, that was the Wild West days.
Hmm.
And Google would show our website just because the domain name was
Hmm.
so common that when somebody would look for a place that had that domain name in it, we'd be at the top of the list.
That's
But that was
great.
the early days of Google. And then they purchased a company, I believe it was called Overture. I may be wrong
Yep.
on that.
Yeah.
But Overture was a company
Yep.
that if you paid enough, you could have the top spot. So if you were selling bananas and you see that people are searching for apples and you're thinking, hey, they might like bananas too, you could bid on apples and then
Hmm.
land them on your banana page. And Google kind of took that same concept at the very, very beginning and realized over time, this is a really bad idea because what it did
Hmm.
was if you paid your way to the top, regardless of their content,
Right.
people would click an ad and get pissed and would not click ads anymore. They just
Yeah.
stopped.
It's fun. Yeah, I
And
can see a million uses for that application. It's like, you're looking for a divorce lawyer, there's a jiu-jitsu studio right there in the top of the ad space.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they bid on divorce lawyer because a lot of jiu-jitsu people get divorced. I don't know, but the users didn't like that. So about, God, time goes by so fast. I was probably 10 years ago. Google revamped how it does paid ads, and they made content king, not bid. And they
Mm-hmm.
took, I don't know this as fact, but it just makes sense to me that why would you recreate this wheel? They took whatever algorithms they use to determine and categorize and I forget the index. So they to
Mm-hmm.
categorize and index a web page. The back end technology that allows them to do that to give you these search results, organic search results. That same concept, if not the exact same tools, can be used by Google Ads to determine how relevant is your content of your landing page and how relevant is that to your ad copy and how relevant are those two to your keyword. You can
Yeah.
use that same technology. And to be clear, and I said this earlier, even if they use the exact same uh, back end algorithms, technology, search coding, if they use the exact same stuff to rate your paid for stuff, it doesn't matter because the concept is exactly the same. How relevant is the search term to the result? And how relevant is the landing page to the result? Is it organic? Is the result good? Like back when Google search results would be the whole page and ads would be off to the side before they dominate now like they do.
Yeah.
But back then, those search results, if you searched for shoe stores near me,
Mm-hmm.
the top 10 results, how likely do you think they would be organic search stores near you on a scale of 1 to 10? How likely are those 10 results to be in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 scale?
I would say unlikely. But I remember those search terms.
No. Maybe I'm not saying it right. The organic search results for that search would be 10 out of 10. Every one of them would be
Okay.
exactly what you just searched for.
Well, they are now, like if you look at the search results in Google, you have the ads, and then you basically have the map with the local listings.
No, fair enough. But back when it was just everything right there on the top, when it was only organic and
Mm-hmm.
ads were off to the side,
Mm-hmm.
every one of those results were dead on perfect. That
I see.
concept is what works for Google Ads. Every single ad that comes up is dead on what you're looking for, unless there's a little wiggle room with interpretation. So like with
Right.
us, the paper tube thing, we constantly competed with Uline for the position, but our ad copy distinguished who we were. So the guy looking for a commercial cheap paper tube didn't
Toilet
even click
paper
our ad.
core. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't look at
Yep.
our ad. They're like, they see the ad, they're like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. So we could filter with the ad copy. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
if you understand, even if you don't know how to do search engine optimization, if you understand the concept, does the search bring up relevant websites with the content I'm looking for? That's search engine optimization at 30,000 feet. You can go drilling down to do you have authority by backlinks? Do you have internal links? And is the content of the page highly relevant to that search term as indexed by Google?
Right.
And, do you have images and alt tags? And are you using meta tags? I don't even think meta tags even matter anymore, but yeah, you could dive in and do, this is what SEO is. But if you can come up here to what is the concept of SEO and apply that to your ads, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The difference being, because you advertise does not mean your organic search results are going to be better.
Right.
They are different things, but the concept is exactly the same. So I will leave you with that that's the secret of PPC. To take it back to your very first question. If you understand
That's a
the
great
search
answer.
optimization concept and you apply that concept to your PPC campaigns,
You're going to do
you
just
are
fine.
halfway home.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. So, as a final question, I generally ask everybody to recommend a book. You want to recommend something you recently read, or maybe it's something you read a long time ago?
Wow. Because I'll tell you, the books that I read are uniformly fiction. Things like,
Yeah, it doesn't
so I, I
have to
don't
be
I don't read
nonfiction.
like I don't do a lot of how-to books, but the one that I did do, and I'll do this one and one other one. The how-to book that I did was called The Four Foundations of Golf. And I think his name is Bob. Gosh, I'm blanking on his last name. I've never done a self-help book that was as effective as that one is. If you're into golf and you haven't read this one, you will get something out of it. The Four Foundations of Golf. He doesn't talk about how to swing the club. He doesn't talk about the mechanics of golf. He talks about the mental aspects of it. He talks about how practice and implementation work. He talks about how your attitude and what you can do when things are going wrong, tools that you can use to help you move through the tough part, what it's like to be under pressure and how do you deal with it. And so it was really good. And I, every once in a while, as I'm driving up to the course, I'll replay the mental game part. Even though I've heard it like 10 times, I'll still go back and go, oh yeah, I got to remember that. And then I won't throw my club as far. You know?
Funny. I got it
And then
written down.
there was a book I read a very long time ago. It's called Back Bay, and it is a historical fiction. It was written a very long time ago, but it is so good. If you are interested in the history of Boston, it is based on real, actual events, and then it's, you know, dramatized as fiction. And the style of the book is it starts in the 1700s with two guys on a rowboat in the Back Bay when it was still Bay, and bad shit happens. Then the next chapter is present day, and you don't see any connection between the two things. And then the third chapter, so every odd chapter picks up where the last one left off, and a little time is advanced. So what happens in the style of the book is, if you only read chapters 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on, you would read the story of how the treasure comes to be in the Back Bay of Boston, and how Back Bay comes to be, and what has changed over the years, from 1700s through World War I, World War II, into present day. And then as you read the even chapters, it's always present day that is moving slightly forward. So the past, as you go, the past keeps catching up until finally the past and the current day come together.
Interesting.
And it's a great read. Even though it's got to be 20, 30 years old, but I've always remembered Back Bay, and I wish I could tell you the author name.
I'll look it up and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, David, it was really great talking with you. I hope I kept enough of the information straight that the point was made without getting too far afield, as I tend to do.
I think you've given more than enough, and I think people will appreciate it. And I certainly appreciate it. Thank you for your time, Bill.
Oh, it was great talking with you. Take care, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye.